Sitting in the luxurious armchair of my mansion in São Paulo, I let the darkness of the night envelop me. My parents sleep upstairs, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding under their roof. Meanwhile, my boyfriend and his brother execute the dark plan that I myself prepared with precision. This is my story. A case that shook Brazil and continues to raise questions. I was born on November 3rd, 1983 in São Paulo, Brazil, into a wealthy family. My father was Manfred Albert von Richthofen, a respected German engineer. My mother, 𝗵𝗫 Silva Abdallah. She was a renowned psychiatrist of Lebanese and Italian descent. Together they built a home full of opportunities. I grew up in a mansion in Brooklyn, Velho. My younger brother, Andreas, and I grew up surrounded by privilege, with access to the best education and experiences that prepared us for a promising future. In November 1998, my father got an important position at 𝗕𝗟𝗓, the company in charge of São Paulo's highways, and in June 2002, he was appointed Director of Engineering. He was in charge of the city's largest project. The Ring Road was finally achieving the success he had long sought. At first glance, our life seemed perfect, but everything changed on a Sunday in August 1999, when we met Daniel Cravinhos, who at only 18 years old was an aero-modeling genius. In a short time, he captivated my 12-year-old brother, Andreas. As a 15-year-old, I couldn't help but notice him. Although he was my brother's older friend, Daniel offered a fascinating contrast to my upper-class life. He represented the freedom I craved. My relationship with Daniel grew, even though my parents disagreed. They wanted me to focus on my studies and the opportunities they had prepared for me. However, their restrictions led me to look for ways to see Daniel privately, without them knowing. I began to make choices that were not right, and unfortunately I dragged my brother into some of those situations. I felt trapped in a cycle. I started using narcotics, and I was so caught up in what I was going through that I even decided not to attend my high school graduation party. After completing my high school education, I entered the Pontifical Catholic University of São Paulo to study law. I spoke 3 languages, and my parents had high hopes for my future, but I kept disappointing them. In April 2002, my mother discovered that I had spent the night with Daniel in a motel. Although I pretended to break up with him, our relationship continued in secret. In July, when my parents went on vacation, I lived those days with an immense sense of freedom, as if I were in a dream. It was then that I proposed moving in with Daniel, but they were adamantly opposed, insisting that I had to finish my studies and find a job first. Between May and September 2002, the military police began receiving anonymous calls, alerting them to intense arguments and fights between my father and Daniel. These problems of coexistence added to the family tensions that already existed, and everything seemed to be getting more and more complicated. Daniel Cravinhos came from a rebellious family. His father had been convicted in the 1970s for using a false lawyer's license, and Daniel dropped out of law school after 6 months without completing his degree. His brother, Christian, also had an extensive criminal past. They made a living repairing cars and motorcycles. On the night of October 31st, 2002, everything fell apart. We convinced my parents to celebrate my birthday at an internet cafe with my brother Andreas. While he played, we asked him to wait for us so the two of us could go to a motel for a few hours. But that's not what happened. At the exit of the internet cafe, there was Christian, Daniel's brother, waiting for us. Around 11 p.m., and without my brother, we parked my Volkswagen in the garage. The brothers put on covers and aprons to prevent their clothes from getting stained. I disconnected the security cameras and alarm. With the iron bars ready, we entered my house, and I went to my parents' bedroom. They were sleeping. My father died instantly from Daniel's blows, while my mother, although she tried to defend herself, died after a brutal fight with Christian. 3 fingers were broken in the attempt. Then we simulated a robbery. We disarranged the house, scattered jewelry, and placed my father's revolver near his body. The bloody clothes and iron bars were meticulously cleaned. According to the reconstruction, I stayed on the first floor taking $5,000, 6,000 euros, 8,000 ries and jewelry, which I handed over to Christian as payment. Then, we dropped Christian off near the apartment where he lived with his grandmother, and Daniel and I stayed in the presidential suite of the Colonial Motel from 1 to 3 a.m. We ordered a Coke and ham sandwiches, leaving footprints to create an alibi. Afterwards, we picked up Andreas from the internet cafe. We dropped Daniel off at his house, and I returned to the mansion with my brother. I feigned surprise when I saw the door open while calling Daniel to come and help. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Daniel reported a robbery to the police. Alexandre Paulino Botto was the first police officer to arrive on the scene, who would later describe the crime as the work of
amateurs.
While Andreas was in shock, I hugged and kissed Daniel. At my parents' funeral, I cried inconsolably in front of the cameras. My brother was destroyed. The neighbors were suspicious of us from minute one for several reasons. One of them was that the day after the events, I took a swim with Daniel in the mansion's pool. Another striking fact for them was that I celebrated my 19th birthday at home with friends. But in spite of everything, it was the greed of Christian, who bought a motorcycle with the stolen money, that led us to ruin. The police arrested him on November 9th. For someone without resources or occupation to buy an imported motorcycle with $100 bills was really suspicious. It didn't take long for him to turn us in. From the moment I was arrested, my bond with my brother was broken. He went to live with my maternal uncle, Miguel Abdallah, and my grandmother, Lourdes. On November 14th, 2002, my brother visited me in jail with my lawyer, 𝗵𝗵𝗍𝗍 Barney. Afterwards, Barney presented a note written by Andreas where he said he forgave me and that our parents would have done the same, although he later stated that he wrote that letter under duress. Prosecutor Tardelli claimed that the letter was a manipulation on my part, but I only longed to get my brother back. However, Andreas moved on with his life, stopped visiting me, and, in 2004, was accepted to the best universities in the state, trying to rebuild himself away from me. At the end of June 2005, I was released while awaiting trial, thanks to habeas corpus. During that time, I tried to approach the house where my brother Andreas, my uncle Miguel, and my grandmother Lourdes lived, but I only succeeded in scaring them away. On April 5th, 2006, shortly before the trial, Rede Globo aired a report about me. We were trying to change my image before the trial, but it all went wrong.
Me arrependo muito.
Você acha que se você não tivesse conhecido o Daniel, nada disso teria acontecido na sua vida?
Não, nada disso, nada disso.
During a pause in the recording, my lawyer, Barney, whispered to me to cry, not realizing that the microphone was still on. The journalists heard him, and the scandal was immediate.
Fala, eu, ora.
Não vou conseguir.
Você tá feliz? Então você tá feliz.
The interview came out on April 9th, 2006. And the next day, I was arrested again by order of prosecutor 𝗕𝗏𝗏. The judge ordered my urgent return to prison. I was fighting not to be left out of the inheritance, but my brother had requested my exclusion for being responsible for the death of our parents. This clause, as a result of my case, would become automatic in Brazilian law. The trial began on July 17th, 2006. With enormous media attention and thousands of people wanting to witness it, I testified that I knew nothing about the plan to kill my parents and blamed the Cravinhos brothers, saying that I was drugged when the crime occurred. Daniel, on the other hand, claimed that I had been the mastermind and justified his actions by inventing that my father mistreated me, something I strongly denied. Andreas testified that we were never abused and that he had been manipulated into writing the letter of forgiveness. He said he did not trust my repentance or my intentions with the inheritance. Expert witness Cynthia Tucunduva emphasized my coldness and recalled that, before the photo for the criminal record, I dressed up and asked Daniel if I looked pretty. Prosecutor 𝗕𝗏𝗏 closed with forcefulness.
Everything was planned as a macabre spectacle. They did it because they wanted to do it.
So on July 21st, 2006, the jury met at night, and at 2 a.m. on the 22nd, Judge Alberto Anderson handed down the sentence. I was sentenced to 39 years and 6 months in prison, the same as Daniel, while Christian received 38 years and 6 months. In addition, it was ruled that the family inheritance of $3 million would only be given to Andreas. Despite the harshness of the sentence, I knew that in Brazil, sentences could become lighter over time, allowing access to a semi-open regime in a few years. Since 2012, the Cravinhos were on a semi-open regime. This meant they could work during the day, but had to return to prison to sleep. In October 2014, I announced my marriage to Sandra Regina Ruiz Gomez, another inmate convicted of the kidnapping and murder of a teenage girl. However, in February 2015, we were separated when Sandra was transferred to another facility. That same month, I gave an interview to Gugu Liberato, where I confessed to having planned the murder of my parents, together with the Cravinhos brothers.
O que aconteceu naquele dia, na sua casa, em que você estava acompanhada dos irmãos Cravinhos?
É um dia que eu nunca mais vou esquecer na minha vida. Porque é um dia que marcou e mudou minha vida de um jeito que nunca mais nada vai ser igual. Nunca mais. Aquela Suzane de 12 anos atrás não existe mais. Aquele dia eu estraguei não só a minha vida, como estraguei a vida do meu irmão, estraguei a vida dos meus pais, estraguei a vida da minha família inteira. De uma forma que não tem mais volta. Se tivesse, eu queria fazer diferente. Putz, como eu queria fazer diferente, mas não tem como voltar, como mudar tudo o que aconteceu.
On the other hand, Christian, who had regained his freedom in 2017, returned to prison after assaulting his ex-wife and trying to bribe the police. My brother Andreas studied pharmacy and biochemistry at the University of São Paulo, and then did a PhD in organic chemistry. He lived with our uncle until 2011, after our grandmother passed away in 2006. Despite his academic achievements, his past continued to haunt him. In 2017, He had problems with drugs and needed treatment to recover. In October 2015, I was successful in obtaining eligibility for semi-open regime. When assessing my possible advancement to the open regime, the psychological report left no room for doubt. I was described as self-centered, narcissistic, manipulative, and violent. My case not only changed my life, but also the lives of many others. Brazilian law was changed to prevent murderers from inheriting their victims, a clause known as the Suzane law. Films and documentaries about my life have kept interest in my story, but not always in the way I would have liked. If you like this video, like it and subscribe for more shocking crime and mystery content. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. In the next video, we will dive into the life of Andrei Chikatilo, the worst serial killer in Russian history. Cannibal, necrophiliac, ripper, man marked since his childhood.
Never turn off the light.